All right, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to the That's So Mets YouTube channel. We decided to dust this thing off because some big time news. We said when news comes in during the offseason and the Mets season is surely over, that we will have a reaction. And the news is in that the Mets are moving on from Luis Rojas as their manager. It sounds like they have made an offer to keep him within the organization somewhat. We'll see. I'm sure he's somebody that wants to keep managing at the major league level. Maybe there's external opportunities, but not a ton of surprise here with how the second half went for the Mets. And, while we will do a deep dive more on this on the actual podcast throughout many weeks ahead, not just this week, kind of want to do an instant reaction. Joe, I don't think you're surprised about this. You and I have said that on the pod before. But more importantly, do you think this was the right move for the organization right now?
Yeah, I do think it's the right move, and I love Louis. I mean, he's
Yeah.
been with the Mets for 15 years. He is probably the last of a dying breed. I mean, he started managing in single A, then managed at double A, then managed at triple A, and then managed at the majors. Like that's the way it used to be, not unlike a player. But now that's just not the model for manager anymore. And it's going to be interesting to see what he chooses to do. I know the Mets are offering him to come back to the organization, but I don't see it. I
Kind of
think
weird,
it,
right?
yeah, it'd be kind of weird. Basically, he'd have to say, like, I'm done managing, which is what he's done for 15 years.
He's not even
And he'd
40
have,
yet, right?
yeah, he's a young guy. Like,
Yeah.
there's, to me, there's another big league managing opportunity in Luis Rojas's future. And staying with the Mets in like a player development role or something to that extent is only going to hurt his future as big league manager. So I think he's probably better off departing the organization, finding a place that would take him as like a bench coach or something to that effect where he could stay involved and then get managerial consideration down the road.
Yeah, it's not like a Terry Collins situation, right? Where it's a retirement gig or there's no bitterness about this. And I don't know if Rojas will necessarily be bitter, but like you said, he has a long baseball future ahead of him where he's probably going to be looking to manage. I would imagine there is a lot of respect for him around the league. And in my opinion is all of those things can exist, but they can also coexist with that. The Mets kind of had to do this. And I've been a big Rojas defender on the podcast almost the entire year. I would say the first 3 quarters of the season. I think he had a really awful September. There's no denying that. But I also am somebody that understands the alignment process, right? You see it in football all the time where teams that, don't align the hirings of their GM to their coaching staff to even the quarterback, there's a lot of friction. There's a lot of problems. And I think Rojas could coexist with a new president of baseball operations, but that doesn't mean that person won't want to bring in their own manager. And the attractiveness of this job will only increase with the bigger the clean slate exists, right? There's hey, if you take this job, you can pick your own manager. Hey, if you take this job, you have this amount of budget for free agency, which is probably going to be pretty big. If you take this job, you have the clearance to trade guys that are described as core players. These are things that the Mets have to greenlight if they want to bring in a big name. And I think there's no denying that's what most of this has to do with.
Totally agree. I think if you want to lure in a Theo Epstein, a Billy Bean, a David Stearns, the kind of guys that they're talking about, you're going to have to give them what is long been called full autonomy. Like I
Yeah.
know that's a buzzword that everyone uses, but just to your point, hey, you come in here, you have the right to pick whoever you want to manage the team. You have control over the roster. You have control over your front office. Who do you want to work for you? And it doesn't hurt. I know Ken Rosenthal mentioned it the other day. It doesn't hurt that they're going to have 2 first-round picks to work with in the upcoming draft, assuming they don't sign a qualifying offer free agent and give up the 14th overall pick. But yeah, I think I mean, if you want to win or you want the opportunity to win, the Mets are going to give you the opportunity to do so. You're going to have payroll flexibility, roster flexibility, coaching staff, front office flexibility. To me, I mean, it is a good job if you're not afraid of Steve Cohen tweeting. I think it is a pretty good job, and to keep it on Rojas, good guy, good manager. I actually don't think he's a bad manager. I think It was a bad circumstance this year that just didn't work out. And with this new regime coming in, I think it would be a disservice to the Mets to say, hey, insert president of baseball operations name here. You get Luis Rojas. And I also think they're trying to do right by Rojas and saying, Louis, you could go pursue other opportunities if you want to, rather than holding until the end of his contract, because technically the Mets had until Halloween to exercise or decline this option.
It's a long
But there's
time.
yeah, so there's no point in waiting. Give him the opportunity to either see, because now he can go out there and see what jobs are available from teams that are making changes, teams that are not playoff teams. And if an opportunity is not there, then maybe he comes back and says, hey, Mets, I'll take you up on that player development offer or whatever role that they're offering him. And just give the opportunity to go search that out. It's the right thing to do by Louis.
So we're going to get through all the candidates on the podcast because, quite frankly, it's a better podcast conversation. It will take 50, 60 minutes to lay out scenarios of, I mean, it's not going to be a three-man race. At the very beginning, which is this week, it could be 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Joe, you texted me and said, there's no way to narrow this down without having the head honcho in place. You don't have the president of baseball operations. You won't have any idea who who this mystery person would want to target. But keeping it very surface level, is there anything that you find particularly attractive, whether it's, Bean bringing over Melvin, which would be an acquisition? That wouldn't just be a hire. That would be an acquisition. Or running back to, now that time has passed, Carlos Beltran, or, a guy that's been in the league for a while, even at that spot, in Ron Washington. I've seen all kinds of names, Joe McEwing, somebody that everybody, I think, thinks will get that chance to be a manager. Are there any specific scenarios that you find, attractive, maybe more than the others right now?
If Billy Bean could bring Melvin over with him, I think that's probably the
The
ideal
no-brainer.
scenario. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a no-brainer. But frankly, I just want this new president of baseball operations to be able to hire whoever their heart desires. And if they want Carlos Beltran, I mean, I was kind of excited to see Beltran as a
Me too.
manager. And maybe he'd do a good job. We don't know. First time manager, I know a lot of people are worried about that. I honestly think that it's probably more likely than not that you see a first time manager if it's not someone like Melvin. And I'm okay with that. Ultimately, nowadays, the manager's still important. They're still making decisions. And obviously, as shown by the move with Rojas today, responsible for what happens on the field. It's not the same as it used to be, where it's completely managed with your gut. And now it's collaborate with the front office. So they need someone that's able to collaborate with a front office and analytics staff, training staff, performance staff. Basically, you have to take everything and then combine all the advice and information and make the right move. My hope is that the Mets aren't an organization where insert manager name here walks in and the lineup's on his desk. But
Yeah.
I hope that it's a good collaborative effort. And that's the only way the Mets are going to move forward as an organization, by everybody working together towards one common goal, and not I'm here and you're here and I tell you what to do. Like, you just got to bring it together. And that's what the best do.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's no denying and that's part of moving on from Rojas in general, is that you just need everybody aligned. I'm sure there are tons of candidates that would have said, I can come in and work with Rojas, but at the end of the day, you need to broaden, the attractiveness of this job, and that's kind of what they're doing here. So, with that being said, thanks everybody for tuning in. That wraps up the discussion on Rojas. Tune into this week's show. We'll do 60 minutes, at least 60 minutes of mailbag questions, more Rojas talk, but more importantly, really what's next, the search for the president of baseball operations that'll trickle down to the manager. So we'll catch you then.